Scott, are you there?
I'm here.
Tina, are you there?
I'm here.
Okay, thank you.
Got the safety thing.
Good. Yeah,
Great.
right. Delay
Everybody up?
too.
I'll take our turn. Everybody's lives?
What do you need?
Your computer, you're up?
Yep.
Everybody good? Carl, you good? Are you good?
Oh, I'm ready, yeah.
All right. Wherever you are.
We'll call to order the special meeting of the Board of Education, which was duly noticed on November 17th, 2020, through posting and notification of the press in accordance with Wisconsin State Statute 19.84. Please rise for the pledge. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thanks.
All right, Jim?
I'd entertain a motion to adopt the agenda.
So moved.
Motion by Greg, second by Kevin. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? That carries 9-0. We have all board members present this evening. Commissioner Murray has the safety message this evening.
Thank you. How does stress impact safety?
Sure. How stress impacts safety. According to Safety and Health magazine, stress can also contribute to an increase in workplace accidents. Speaking with magazine, Dr. David Spiegel, medical director of the Stanford Center on Stress and Health, said there is a direct correlation between an increase in worker stress and an increase in workplace accidents. It is very clear that a big proportion of safety problems are due to human error, and some of that is related to stress. However, stress can also contribute to distraction. A stressed worker is more likely to be thinking about his or her stress source and be less focused on the task at hand. The magazine noted poor attention can lead to accidents and injury, and then it gave a whole list of things we could do, or they suggest, and here's just one. Tip number 6, take time off. No matter how positive your outlook, stepping away from the job from time to time is important. Many people are reluctant to take time off and are afraid that it will make them appear less dedicated to their work. But people who take vacations come back relaxed and are more productive. Taking a break to do something you enjoy can give you new perspective and energy. A break doesn't have to be a trip to the Bahamas to be effective. Taking short breaks during the workday helps you come back more refreshed and awake. Go outside and walk to a restaurant instead of eating lunch at your desk. Volunteer to make a delivery to a branch office or take a bit of personal time to run errands. Taking a few minutes away from work can also help you fight off illness that can lead to work backups and more stress.
Thank you, Commissioner Murray.
Betcha.
We have citizen comments this evening. We have received electronically probably over 30 comments, which we appreciate that. We have some that used the comments forum and others that contacted board members directly or used the School District of Janesville board link on our website. So we appreciate those comments. They're always helpful. We have 3 people interested this evening. First, we have Richard Gardner. Richard, would you like to come in? David, is Richard out there? Yep. Richard, please, right here, please give your name and your address. And I do have an electronic comment from you. Is it the same one? Arch Street, and I have Reed
No, I'm in
Road.
transition with my address.
Okay, that's fine. So we have 3 minutes. Go ahead and share your name and address for the record.
My name is Richard Gardner. Right now I'm staying at 3611 South Reed Road, Janesville, Wisconsin, 53546.
All right, thank you. You have about 3 minutes.
Okay. All right. Well, it's good to see all of you. Try to soak it in here for a second. I'm here for one reason, children. I care about them deeply. And I know, and I believe strongly what is best for them is school, and not to be at home with parents who are lost and don't know how to guide them. And our teachers who care about them deeply, wholeheartedly, are the ones who should guide them daily, every single day, that they should be at school Monday through Friday of 180 days of the school year. There's not a doubt in my mind that that is a fact. I feel it wholeheartedly. And there's any data that you want to give, any of that type of stuff, it matters. I know it does. There are people out there sick, but I care about the kids. Their social, emotional, physical, mental well-being. That's it. Nothing more. I'll stand here and I'll tell you every day for the rest of my life until I'm gone off this earth that is the only thing that matters on this planet is our children. And you can tell me their physical well-being is in harm when they're at school, but I will not believe it for a second. And the data will back me up. The data says otherwise. I heard it today. In Beloit, they're not in school. They have more cases than we do in Janesville. In Janesville, we're doing great because we got people, teachers who care about kids. They're every single day caring about kids, loving kids. And we got parents at home who are lost, who don't know how to love even themselves. And that's what I'm fighting for. I'm fighting for kids. And I know you guys are all too. You're here because you care about kids. And if I can sway one or two of your votes today to keep kids in school, not 2 days a week, 5 days a week, because you all know what's most important. And I know you do. I can see it in your eyes. I can see it in your hearts and souls. I want every one of you to vote, keep kids in school 5 days a week. And we will keep them safe, and the data backs it up. We are doing our best. Our nurses are doing an amazing job. And if you put it in the hands of Rock County, good luck. Wait, might as well wait in line, because that's what they'll be waiting. And they won't be growing, that's for sure. They will be falling, spiraling downhill into a deep depression, which I see in the eyes of over half the kids in my classroom. And I fight every day for their learning, of course, but I fight for their well-being more than their learning. I know learning is important. I know our minds need to grow. But how are they going to grow if they aren't even awake of any kind? They have to be awake. They have to be in a school. They have to be with people who care about them and want them to grow in more ways than one. So I say to you today, make the right decision, that you know what is right. We all know what is right. Keep kids in school 5 days a week.
Thank you, Richard.
You're welcome.
Next, Dave Groth, please. Hello, David.
Dave Groth, 920 Columbia Drive, Janesville. The JEA stance on the pivot options is for full virtual learning at all levels. The position of the JEA has been to move away from face-to-face instruction for safety's sake. In light of recent upticks in the COVID-19 infections and spread, the JEA is again calling for the safety to be first and foremost the priority. The proposed cohort model at the elementary levels would be far from good practice. Teaching virtually and face-to-face at the same time could be problematic at best. At the elementary level, especially lower grades, there needs to be a lot of consistency and repetition, and it's almost impossible to do this with fidelity, both virtually and face-to-face going on at the same time. Many of the student lessons are differentiated to meet their learning needs. The majority of teachers do guided reading and math. The cohort plan would make it impossible for that to continue in an effective way. This on and off again plan would also be a logistical nightmare for parents and childcare. Stamina for the elementary student to attend virtually is much less than in person. For example, shortened schedule worked much better virtually during Roosevelt's second pivot than when they tried to keep the same schedule and teach virtually during the first pivot. The cohort plan would have students at home and student in school expected to be equally attentive. Substituting in the virtual face-to-face model would be especially difficult. Who would fill in for that day, and would they be expected to be doing virtual and face-to-face at the same time? There are many more reasons why the proposal for a cohort plan would not benefit children. But please also consider that the high level of stress that teachers are under this year, and while considering this proposal, this type of cohort plan would simply add to that stress and affect their mental well-being. As a veteran teacher, I only want to do what's best for students, and the cohort plan seems to be far from good practice. So good luck with your choices, board. Thank you.
Thank you, David. Next, we have Laura Madison. Hello, Laura.
How are you guys doing?
Terrific. Good.
Excellent. Glad to hear that. Gotta get my notes out. Hi, I'm Laura Madison. I live at 2206 Kellogg Ave here in Janesville. I'm here to kind of represent what middle school teachers have shared with me for the middle school perspective of the options that are ahead of you tonight. Overall, there's two main concerns that I have found. Concern number one is safety. Safety for staff, students, family, the community, and helping to stop the spread of COVID. The other concern is consistency. Students learn best when there's routine and there's structure. So I understand that there's two plans in front of you tonight. There's one with an AB and there's one that's fully virtual. In regards to the AB, thoughts that I have had from teachers are, we like the idea of having half the students there because that does lessen the impact of a positive COVID case. And they're going to have the social emotional benefits of being there around each other. However, many students have expressed concern that students are going to struggle with following an A-B schedule. And there's a big difference. For example, our sixth graders forget A or B day, even though we tell them. And there's a big difference between going to the wrong class and not showing up to school when you're choosing to be at home because you got your A-B mixed up. In regards to the virtual, we do feel this is kind of the safest option for staff and teachers. Middle school teachers have been preparing for this. I teach at Franklin and Edison, and at both buildings, we have been doing our lesson plans in a way that we could quickly switch to a virtual learning. So the students are prepared for this as well as the teachers. We do have, people have mentioned a concern over rising class sizes because we have been getting some students back from a Rise Virtual Academy. And we have some buildings have an inability to socially distance. There's too many kids in a classroom, and with the weather changing, it's entirely possible that we can't take our kids out for a walk for a mask break and maybe open windows to get as much fresh air as we would like to get in the building. Some people are going to argue that going virtual is going to be like it was this past spring. It will not. Okay. We will have clear expectations. We will have structure, we will have routine, and we will have these Zoom meetings or Google meetings where we are communicating with the students, which was not necessarily in place this past spring. And some people will argue that virtual teaching is less work for the teachers, and that's why teachers want it. And I can assure you this is not the case. We have been preparing, and we are aware of the amount of work that would go into virtual teaching, and we are ready for it if necessary. Overall, I just want to say that all that we have done, and I mean we, not just Janesville, but Wisconsin and the United States, have been doing is reactive. We have been reacting to everything. Choosing the virtual option would be a proactive plan to keep staff, students, their families, and the community safe, especially around the holiday season when we expect numbers to rise. Thank you.
Thank you, Laura.
Thank you. I'm sorry, thank you.
All right. Next on the agenda, Superintendent Pufall with an update on the COVID-19 data.
Well, tonight I stand in front of you with some decisions and choices that you're going to have to make. Do you want to be kicked in the shin or hit in the stomach? Because that's about what it boils down to, right? There are no easy decisions here tonight. There's not an obvious right or wrong, or honestly, we wouldn't be here. Or if we were, we wouldn't be here for very long. And we wouldn't have all the interest that we've had in hearing from our community. And so, having said all of that, I want to just walk you through, and we're going to actually take a team approach to this. Tina's going to talk about I'm going to overview some of the data at kind of the county level. I know you've seen a lot of that data already. I think our community needs to have an opportunity to be introduced to some of that data that maybe they haven't looked at quite as closely as you have. And we want to talk about our students, we want to talk about our staff, and we want to talk about some program options. Again, every solution's imperfect. Every solution involves trade-offs and risks. It's just really about us deciding what we think is going to be best for our kids. So let's take a little bit of a dive at what's going on in Janesville. So this chart is showing you, and for our community folks maybe seeing this for the first time, and I know it's probably a lot of numbers if you're trying to see this on YouTube right now. School District of Janesville, second from the bottom. This chart has all of the school districts in Rock County. There are 9 of them. And this is the number of active cases as of these dates, and the dates are across the top of the chart, per 10,000 people. And so if we go back to the second half of August, when we were deliberating over should we start school face-to-face or not, at that moment in time, there were 12 cases per 10,000 people in our school district boundaries. Fast forward, I'll jump over a couple of columns here to October 22nd, or excuse me, to September 23rd, a month later. And we went from 12 to 24 cases per 10,000. It doubled. Still not super high though, but it doubled. When we go from September 23rd and then we jump ahead to October 22nd, we can see it quadrupled in that month, right? It went from 24 cases to 100 cases per 10,000. Active cases as of October 22nd. Fast forward one more month, just about, to the last column, November 16th, and we're at 144 cases. And so the trend line continues to go up, right, unfortunately. And we all know that because you can't, you can't be in the community or read a paper or be, right, you can't not know that that's going on, right? And so, so we know that the number of active cases is continuing to go up. Not my opinion. Here's the data that shows that. This next chart is just a graphic representation of those data points and some other data points that we took off of that first chart just to fill in those gaps. And again, you can see across all school districts in in Rock County, that trend line is continuing to go up. Of course, we all know the data has a dashboard. Or the Rock County Public Health Department has a dashboard. And I'm not going to go through that whole dashboard tonight. I've picked out just a couple of things that I want to, again, be able to highlight for our community. The first is green. So green is good, right? Yellow is caution, and red is not good. So green is about our schools, is the School District of Janesville specifically able to implement the 5 key mitigation strategies: masking, distancing, hand washing, cleaning and disinfecting protocols, and contact tracing for our kids and staff. And you'll see that's a green light. Those things are going well. Now, are we stressed out as an organization sometimes from that? Our nurses, yeah, right? We still have the same 5 nurses that we had before COVID. And before COVID, they were all busy dealing with kids' scuffed knees, sprained ankles, diabetic stuff, administration of medication, all the other things they do. And it's like they, it depends on the day now, right? Because it ebbs and flows. But now there are contact tracers, and they get help from administration as well. And sometimes it's overwhelming. And so while we're green, it's a stress point. We're looking at the next two bullets. This is the number of, in the last 14 days now in Rock County, the number of new cases. And you'll see that it's per 100,000, not 10,000, so per 100,000. So 1,307 active cases in Rock County, not just the school district, now the whole county, per capita per 100,000. 1 week ago, that number was 1,067. And so that chart that I just went through with the lines and all of that, that gets updated on Thursdays. And so I can tell you what's going to happen to that line tomorrow. The next number on here is the percent of positive cases. 31.9% of all people being tested in Rock County are testing positive over the last 2 weeks. 1 out of 3. In August, when we opened school, that number was 4.5%. 1 out of 23. Hospitalizations for COVID, specifically, during the last 2 weeks. And you can see those numbers. It's up over 60 as an average. When we opened school in August, it was between 5 and 10. Transmission has been red the whole time. That's community transmission. That's that middle dot. And then you can see quite a long history, actually going back almost to the beginning of the pandemic. 2 lines for 4 to 13-year-olds and 14 to 18-year-olds, and the number of kids who are specifically getting COVID. And you can see back in August again when we, that number was down in the 10 to 15 range for each line, and it's now up in that 60 category. So again, no surprises there, right? We know the virus is really wildly out of control in the community. As a result of that, the Rock County Health Department shifted the community, all communities in the county on Monday of this week back to phase 1. And there's a lot of pages to all of that, but I picked out the 2 boxes that matter the most to us. And these are those, right? K-12 schools, they recommend that we pivot to virtual, and or if we're not virtual, to have the flexibility to go there quickly. They specifically go on to say that for the 2 weeks after each of the upcoming holiday periods, Thanksgiving and winter break, that we be virtual, because unfortunately, as much as everybody's being asked to continue to follow those same rules that I described earlier, we know that probably that's not going to be the case during the holidays, and so we can expect that the numbers will continue to get worse. Now, that's a projection. That's not an actual. Everything you've seen so far is an actual. What are some of the other county school districts doing? This gives you, as of this morning, what's going on, right? Beloit's been virtual all year. No athletics. Turner's meeting tomorrow night. Milton's meeting starts in 6 minutes. Edgerton is going to be virtual till the end of the semester, and they have not decided whether they're going to play sports or not yet. They're meeting next Monday night for that. Clinton, as you can see, is virtual with no sports. Parkview is in person. They will have sports, but their athletes have to be virtual. Broadhead is in person with athletics, and Evansville is in person without athletics. So you can see there's a real, right, there's not a pattern here, right? There's a little bit of everything going on. So without further ado, let me stop there. Do you have any questions about those slides? Michelle?
The county data, slide 2, there's only 8 districts listed. Where is Broadhead in that one?
Broadhead is probably not on there because they're a border district, and they are partly in Greene County And so I don't think Rock County's tracking that data for them because of them not being completely in the contiguous Rock County area.
Okay, thank you.
Yep.
Thank you. What's our total FTE for nursing staff? Are we just saying we just have five
Five.
full-time? That's it? Just five
Now,
FTE?
we have a bunch of assistants, right, but they're not nurses, right? They're health assistants, and so we have a whole bunch of those folks, but we have 5 nurses.
So they got the 5 nurses that have oversight over, I just don't want it to seem like we only have 5 people that are caring for health.
Yeah, good point.
You know what I mean?
Commissioner Murray, thank you. Yeah, there's definitely a team of people that work in support with them. And every building has nurse assistant time as part of their faculty as well. And certainly they're helping with those things, all of those things. I talked about COVID and non-COVID.
About how many of those assistants you think we have in the district?
I'm going to turn to Kim because you'll get a much more accurate answer to that
Thank you.
question from her than me.
So at the elementary level, every building's given at least 4 hours of health aid time to dedicate to health practices. And then at the middle and the high schools, it's a building determination regarding how much time they want to dedicate to that health room. Obviously, at the middle and high school level, they do choose to make sure someone is within those settings throughout the day for when the nurse is not available.
All right. Seeing no other questions, I'm going to turn the proverbial verbal microphone over to Ms. Johnson. Tina, you're up next. Thank you.
Excellent. Thank you, Steve. Good evening, commissioners. For those of you watching, this is Tina Johnson. I'm the Director of Benefits Administration and Wellness for the School District of Janesville. And I'm here tonight to share with you a little bit about the COVID-19 impact on staff. Sharing with you just the staff perspective. We talk a lot about the students and the nurses and who all covers what areas. The Benefits Department of the School District of Janesville assists the staff. So we're going to talk a little bit about what that looks like. Moving on to slide 9.
Okay.
We're going to do just a brief overview of basically the last week in August through October. What is important to note here are the duration of leave times. We have a 10-day leave for an isolation. That would be for a COVID-positive individual. We have a 14-day leave time for a quarantine, which is specifically for close contacts of a COVID-positive person. And then we have the ability or the possibility of a 24-day leave time. And that is due to an individual living with someone who is COVID positive, who cannot isolate and perhaps becomes positive or remains asymptomatic. They would have to stay the 10 days of that person's isolation and add an additional 14 days of individualized quarantine. These are rules set forth by the Rock County Public Health Department, and the district determined back in July that they would follow those rules. So as you can see, as you start to take a look at the data pieces here this evening regarding staff, those durations are anywhere between 10 and 24 days out. So let's review. End of August through September, we had 125 staff leave of absence, isolations, and or quarantines start. During the month of September through the end of September, 75 of those staff members came back. They returned to work. That is to say that their isolation or quarantines ended during that time, with the remaining 50 individuals who carried over into the month of October. In addition to those 50, we had 95 staff go out on different leaves for isolation and or quarantine beginning, with 150 staff returning to work by the end of October. So that gives you a total of 227 staff leave requests for those 2 months. I think that's an important number for us to remember as we move through this presentation, as you will see the increase in numbers. We had 219 individuals return to work by the end of October. It's also important for us to note that during this time, in the months of September and October, we had some schools pivot to virtual instruction. Those schools included Craig High School, Adams Elementary, Harrison, Jefferson. My thing is freezing up on me. And Roosevelt. I apologize. Thank you. Moving on to the next slide.
Okay.
Slide 10. We are now going to look at the criteria for leave related to COVID-19. It's important for us to remember that when we're keeping track of data, it's a snapshot in time. It's continuously moving. So today we took this, or yesterday we took this little snapshot. As of today, this has increased even more so. But it's important just to read it and see. People will be out on leave due to a government self-isolation or quarantine. Those are people who are COVID positive and or are direct contact with a COVID positive individual. You will see that sitting at about 43% of our employees who are documented out for that reason. Healthcare provider advised self-quarantine. Again, that is another person who is quarantined due to being tested or COVID-like symptoms, presumed to be positive, but haven't gotten their information from Rock County. As we know, Rock County is inundated right now. If they come back with a positive test and they haven't received a letter, those would be healthcare provided. We have 31% of those individuals. We have individuals who are out due to care for other people. So that may be an elderly parent who lives with that individual, or someone who may be immunocompromised that they have to care for. And then also child school, daycare, or caregiver closing. That also has 22% of individuals at this time who are out for those reasons. Again, I think it's important to note that this information that you're seeing on this slide is consistent with information provided from November 1st of 2020 through November 17th of 2020. Again, it's important to understand that this is all documented proof and verification that comes through the benefits office. There's a very direct, very clear pathway to for our employees to gain access to a leave, as well as all the contact tracing and documentation that goes along with asking for a leave related to COVID-19. We did implement a new system just back on November 2nd with the assistance of the administration at each building due to just the sheer fact that there's a great deal of information gathering and documentation that has to take place, and I didn't feel that we were getting it out in a timely enough fashion for our employees. So we're just kind of trying to adjust as we went along. So according to this information here, you will see there's 169 leave requests since 11/1 of 2020. I can tell you currently, just looking at the chart prior to coming into this meeting, we are sitting at 190. Next slide. Slide 11. You're going to see here dating back to October 19th through today, kind of a trend line for total number of staff out with COVID-like symptoms, quarantines. These are COVID positive. Again, kind of tracking just in the last couple of weeks. On average, that's 89 staff per day, and it's all staff. Again, all of these are documented leaves. But I think the other piece of this is understanding that while this is kind of complex data and there's a lot of different ways you can sort data, every single one of these numbers represents a person, and each of these people have a story. And I'm on the other end of that story, listening on a nightly basis to just a variety of situations, whether it's the fear because they have somebody they're living with, or they've come back positive and they have a underlying health condition, or they wake up at 5 o'clock in the morning with fever and other symptoms and they are worried about their classroom. Every single one of these numbers represents a person, and I think it's important for us to remember that as we go through data. Next slide. Some of the questions that have come up are regarding what staff positions are out, who is out as far as the staff are concerned. Again, updated just this evening at 190 people. We have roughly 56% are teachers and 17% are paraprofessionals, making up about 73% of our employees. All other positions are food service, custodians, OTPT, IT staff, and others. Next slide. Any questions regarding those data pieces before we go into substitute fill rates?
So Tina, thanks for sharing that. I asked for some of this data earlier today, and when we got it, it still said about 55% of the staff that are out are teaching staff, certified staff. So it's still consistent this evening. But 76% of those are still working. So 76% of those people, the certified staff that are out, are still teaching remotely to their students. Correct?
That is correct.
Thank you.
I would add to that, Michelle, that while we are able to provide that Z-COVID remote option for our employees and our students, which we think is a really important connection, that still requires us to have an adult person in the classroom. And if you notice, that typically falls on a paraprofessional or other teachers within the building. We'll talk a little bit more about that when we look into the substitute data. So while we do have those individuals able to teach remotely, it does require us to, by law, provide another staff member in the classroom while the one is Z-COVID remote. Does that clarify that?
Yep. Thank you. I understood that.
Excellent.
Tina, do you know what percentage of people, of the 190 people, contracted COVID? Do we trace it so we know where they contacted in the district or out of the district?
We contact trace inside the district. I also, obviously, I know where individuals, or at least, through contact tracing, between myself and Mary Ann, Dr. Kale, we talk to every single individual. And they're not really, if we had community spread within the district, Rock County would be, pretty involved in that. The nurses are very involved in that. I can't give you a direct percentage right now, Steve, but we've done a really great job of trying to ensure that our employees are following all the rules. And I do have to just say kudos to them, because we don't have a lot of staff-to-staff, student-to-staff infection. There's been some, but it's not running rampant.
So I don't want to hold you to a number, but more than half, less than half, more than 25%, less than 25% are contracting in the district?
Oh, gosh, definitely less than half. I would even probably venture to guess less than 25% or right around there.
Okay. All right. Thank you. Any other questions? Substitute.
Excellent. Thank you. I can't see you, so I appreciate that notice. So we're going to talk a little bit about substitute fill rates for teachers and paraprofessionals and what that looks like. So I am on slide 14. It says absences versus jobs filled for teachers.
Okay.
Are we there?
Yep.
Yep, excellent. So what I wanted to take notice to here is if you look at that gray line, the gray line are the total absences. So how many people called in that day for a substitute teacher? And again, notice it's how many called in that day for a substitute. And then the green line represents who do we really need to fill. That isn't to say that every role in the school isn't important. They all are. However, there are some roles within the school that don't have that classroom experience, and we can finagle a schedule to work around them being not in the building. That would be like maybe a counselor or a staff member, a non-certified staff member, paraprofessional, different positions that we may be able to fill, around. And then the red line is the total amount filled, the total people that we actually filled for through absence management. And as you look at those numbers, the gap between the red and the green are really where we're focusing on filling. And there's a gap there all the way across. And I think the important piece here is to understand that somebody has to take up that space. The question is who? And the who are the other teachers in the building. Or maybe it's the principal or counselors, various and sundry other people who would typically not be in a classroom or who would have a prep are filling in for those individuals who are out because we weren't able to get a substitute teacher that day. In essence, what that means is a lost prep or, just a back-to-back-to-back schedule. And while we do pay those individuals or offer ERT, and I'll let, if Scott wants to chime in on how that goes from an HR perspective, I think it's important that we understand the level of day after day after day, the constant schedule of filling for another grade level or another area, and what that does for an employee. Then I will move on to the next slide. Slide 15 are paraprofessionals. And again, same rule here. The gray are the ones that got called in. The green are what we absolutely have to fill. Those are small group instruction or they're specifically aiding in a classroom. And the red are the total amount filled. You can see that the percentages are quite low. The numbers are quite low. And these employees are often used as the adult fill-in for our remote teachers. So that if that number is down, then it's pulling people from other areas, which is why you see the majority of the closings that we've had thus far have been directly related to the impact that these slides are showing. The fact that we aren't able to cover classes or fill the absenteeism. Any questions on absence and substitute fill?
Hi, Tina, thank you. So,
Hi, Kevin.
Hi, slide 14 and 15, is that all absences? That's just not carved out COVID-related absences, that's everyone?
That is everyone.
Okay.
So COVID or not?
What's that?
COVID or not?
Right, could be, right, right.
Yes, it could be an FMLA, it could be,
Okay.
and at this point in November, the month of November, I think it's important to understand that we are if an individual is out with symptoms, it's a sick leave day until they are COVID positive or there's some other indication from a doctor. They're sick leave days, so that's also part of this data for the month of November.
Thank you.
Other questions? Tina, could you share, the board approved about a month or so ago, an increase in wages for the substitutes. Could you share what we're doing to recruit? I've had the question 3 times that there are a lot of businesses are using billboards and other ways to recruit substitutes. Could you share what we're trying to do now that we are, I believe, the highest paid substitute teachers in Rock County? One person called, in fact, and indicated one of our regular subs went to a different district for a long term. So are we doing anything differently since we approved the increase in wages?
Thank you for that, Steve. I think I'm going to defer to HR on this question because they do handle all of the hiring for subs and that work. So, Scott, are you available to chime in?
I am, yes. You recall the board years ago, we did pushed out to movie theaters, for example, and advertised on the screens prior to the movies. Clearly, with COVID, no one's typically going to the movies. We are trying to recruit via other venues other than We Can, for example. We're going out to Indeed. We have put out at LinkedIn. We are trying to get that message out, and we have pushed out our messages advertising our rates to our current subs and have offered to please use word of mouth regarding that increase. In addition, We also have implemented a referral program. That is something that we've been talking about getting started back up once again. The referral program, again, through word of mouth, if a teacher or staff member knows of a qualified person able to sub, and they actually are hired as a sub and then sub, we did at one point give out incentive money to staff members.
So
I
we,
would add to that too. I do recall Allison DeGraff having a conversation with Whitewater, and it's still in the works, but it's talking about field studies with student teachers as they move forward and the possibility of working something out with Whitewater regarding that.
so we have not done anything with Facebook advertising, billboard advertising. Everybody and their brothers got signs in front of businesses, and we have reader boards at many of our schools, PTA newsletters, and we are closing in on the end of the semester where we'll have a group of students that'll be graduating from UW Whitewater that may be looking for work. If there's not work available, that could be substitutes. I'm just curious. It's a question that came up a couple of times, and one of the reasons the board approved that increase in wages was so we wouldn't have a huge gap between the haves and the gap in the number of filled positions. So I think I think the board would be interested in having us do a little more marketing as to getting the people to work for us, not necessarily stealing from other places, but leveraging our resources. So, Kevin?
I would agree. We do have money in the budget for advertising for the billboards. For example, we have put money in that line item, and we have been actively researching with our colleges, our feeder colleges, for teachers to, as Tina mentioned, to try and get people to the district.
Kevin?
I just want to make sure I'm clear. So if I assume right now we're hiring substitutes. Is that correct?
Yes, constantly. Yes, we have
And-
that vacancy always open.
And you go
always hiring when someone is recruited.
and you go to a weekend to open the door. Is that correct?
That is kind of our HR filtering system. Absolutely, that's how we keep track of the applicants and contractor credentials. Yes.
And then does the school district go through all the footwork? We're doing background checks, vetting, and all that. We do all that ourselves.
Yes, we do.
Have we ever considered using a outsourced group to do that work for us, to do all that stuff for us?
We are actually looking right now as for an entire HR department. We are looking at a more efficient reference system. It's called Skill Survey, and that allows us to push out and check references via electronic. We used to we currently call every reference. And as you are aware, not everyone is going to answer their phone the first time, and we play a lot of phone tags. So now we are looking at a system to make that more efficient. And we do utilize the service for our background checks. So we don't have to do that. We actually we subscribe to a site, and then they send that back with a fee.
Thank you.
Anyone else? Michelle?
I think we could also utilize the website under the scrolling news. There's nothing about how to apply for that or open jobs or anything.
I'm sorry, Michelle. Could you repeat that? I couldn't hear you.
I was just saying, I think we could utilize our website as well. There's nothing on the homepage that says, how to apply, and we have a huge sub need.
Yes, we've done that in the past as well. Thank you.
All right. It looks like Kim Gurnbull is next.
Good evening, everyone. As Superintendent Pufall indicated earlier this evening, the school nurses, along with building administration and other confidential employees, are responsible for the contact tracing in the school setting when the school is notified that a student has a positive COVID-19 test result. When contact tracing, we are looking for individuals who are deemed close contacts. A close contact is defined as being closer than 6 feet
for more than 15 minutes with or without a mask, sharing of food, drink, or personal items, or direct physical contact, such as hugging and kissing. For the months of September and October, we had a combined total of 49 positive student cases that the school district was made aware about. And of those 49 positive student cases that the district was made aware of, we had 543 students be deemed close contacts within the school setting, which meant those students had to quarantine and or isolate for 14 days before they could return to school. On average, each of these positive student cases for the months of September and October averaged 11 close contacts. As the number of positive cases in the community have increased, buildings identified a high number of students being absent from school related to COVID-19 who were not necessarily identified by the school as being a positive COVID-19 individual or a close contact. Effective this week, the district began tracking and reporting out all reported student absences related to COVID-19. The criteria for these absences are as follows: a student who has a positive COVID-19 test result, a student who has been deemed a close contact by the school due to contact with a positive student or positive staff member in the school setting, or a student that has been identified by the Rock County Public Health Department or a medical provider as needing to quarantine or isolate. For example, because they're living with a parent or a grandparent who has tested positive, therefore, because they live in the same household, they are also being required to quarantine. As you can see, our November data shows a significant increase in the number of students impacted by COVID-19 in the school setting. Of the 73 total positive student cases for the month this far, the district has only had to deem 162 students as close contacts because those students were in the school setting and were within contact of another individual. The district has also decreased the number of close contacts that we're identifying within the school setting. So for each one of those positive student cases, we are now down to about 4 close contacts that we are identifying within the school setting when we have to contact trace. Are there any questions about student data that I can answer for you before I turn it over to Allison to go over the different options at each level that you'll be considering tonight?
So that was very, very thorough. When you started, did I understand you to say that we have far more students who are calling in absent that are not COVID related? They're not identified as having COVID or being close contacts in COVID?
We have far more students not attending school because they have a family member that is COVID positive,
Okay.
versus the student actually being positive, having come into the school setting, other students that were within that close contact criteria then having to be sent out.
Okay, so if a parent is identified and they are in quarantine, separated from the rest of their family, that doesn't matter probably.
The Rock County Health Department would investigate those situations and do a thorough interview to ensure that a parent can truly isolate.
Okay,
If they can identify that a parent could truly isolate themselves from the rest of the family. We have had situations where students have been able to still come to school
Okay.
even though they're living with a family member who's positive, but that's all on an individual basis and based upon a final county investigation.
okay. And then a parent spoke with me today about their child having to stay at home because a student in their class was identified as a close contact. They had been in contact with that student, so that student then had to stay home. But both were wearing masks all the time they were together. So did I understand that it doesn't matter if you're wearing a mask or not?
So it doesn't matter whether you're wearing a mask or not. If you are within 6 feet for 15 minutes or more, you're deemed a close contact. But I do just want to clarify that a close contact means that that person had that close contact with the positive person.
Okay,
We do not close contact or quarantine students just because they associated with someone who was a close contact.
all right,
It has to be direct contact with that positive individual.
okay. Okay, so that may be a consistency issue, I guess.
I think there's a lack of understanding as to
Oh,
why, because
sure.
obviously with FERPA and HIPAA, we can't always release names and a lot of that type of information, so sometimes assumptions are made.
Mhm.
And as much as we'd like to give out more information, we're just unable to. So
Nope.
people at times may draw their own conclusions
Sure.
as to why they were or were not deemed a close contact or why someone is
Sure.
isolated or quarantined.
Other questions for Kim? Michelle?
So if a student is kept home on quarantine or because of a close contact, I know because I asked Dr. Bion for what happens at the high schools so let's see, if they're A day, B day. So if a student is home and not able to attend school, what happens at the high schools, based on the documentation Dr. Bion sent, is they still have a video link to go into the classroom, get the instruction that they're supposed to get. All the teachers are supposed to post this. And to make it easier for the teachers, they just open up that link every day, and then they don't have to keep track of, okay, who is in, who's out, whatever. So the students are still getting instruction at the high school. That's what's supposed to be happening, right from the teacher if they're sent home. Is that the same for elementary and middle school?
Yes. All students are given the opportunity to continue learning what the rest of the class is learning. If they're not provided a live link, they're at least provided the same materials, and the teachers are checking in with that family. So for example, our younger children who maybe it's not feasible for them to be logging into that live link because they just aren't as independent, a parent still may be given materials to work on with them at home that match what the classroom students are doing.
Okay. But high school, all the teachers are opening this link every single day for the students to get the same instruction as they would if they were there.
That is the expectation,
Thank you.
yes.
Other questions for Kim? Well, thank you. I would share with you that I don't know if you see all the emails we received, but we received, as board members, many accolades for how teachers and schools have handled addressing students who are at home. I, in particular, emailed back to all the people that emailed me and asked if they're willing to share the school and the grade levels. And it was overwhelmingly positive as to how staff were handling that and being resourceful. And particularly in the elementary schools, they shared specific situations where they felt comfortable that their student wasn't being left behind. So we appreciate all the work that you're all doing.
Thank you.
Allison is up next.
Yes, well, I'm just moving. Yeah. Yes, so good evening. As Superintendent Pufal has shared the current data from Rock County, as well as Kim and Tina have shared some of our school district data with you as well. So tonight, as you consider this decision or next steps for our district, based on the Rock County recommendation, we want to review where we're at with our current instructional models at elementary, middle, and secondary, and then other models as well that are also models that are in other districts, obviously related to our COVID situation. So as we look at the high school, where are we at currently? Currently, we are on an A-B schedule, and within that A-B schedule, we also know In the short term right now, Craig is in distance learning, but if we were to remain in the current situation, they would be returning on November 30th if things would remain the same. So we currently A/B schedule for high school. An additional option in looking at high school would be the distance learning option. We obviously have had high schools in distance learning and have one right now. And as I'll talk about with elementary and middle school, we've really been able to, what happened in the spring at elementary, middle, and high school is very different than what's happening now. We've really increased the expectations and the rigor of what is happening during the day during distance learning. As we think about our elementary and middle school options, currently we know that our elementary and middle school are face-to-face. We do have one middle school, again, that transitioned to distance learning for these 2 weeks, and if we remained in the current situation, would be returning November 30th. So currently, face-to-face at elementary and middle school. We also know that, again, distance learning is one of those options as well, and as I just mentioned, we've really made a lot of significant changes to distance learning at our elementary and middle school, and really created an instructional schedule that allows all of our core content areas as well as special areas and social emotional learning involved in those schedules. We've had several elementary schools pivot to distance learning and use that schedules and have found it to be very effective and received a lot of positive parent feedback as well. The A/B schedule, again, we research and look at other districts that have used A/B schedules for K-8. And so taking that information to look at an A/B schedule option as well. That is somewhat different from the high school. But within that A/B schedule, I know you received information previously from Superintendent Pufal describing more details about the A/B schedule, so I won't go into as many details. But for example, if you were in cohort A, you would be attending, if we looked at that cohort schedule, if I was a middle school student and in cohort A, on Monday, both cohorts would be from home learning virtually following the district distance learning schedule with all 8 periods, but a somewhat shortened day. So one of the reasons we chose Monday, if we were looking at this schedule, to be virtual is because there's a lot of information that comes in over the weekend and contact tracing that happens on that Monday too as well. So virtual would be Monday for everyone, cohort A and B. If you're in cohort A, on Tuesday and Thursday, you would be face-to-face in the building. And on Wednesday and Friday, when you were virtual, you would be logging in at home and attending those same classes from home with a virtual link. So essentially middle school would be, you would have 5 days a week of instruction each day, but you would either be face-to-face or virtual, just which model were you in. With elementary, that would need to be slightly different as well, as we know there's a few more challenges, and developmentally, you wouldn't appropriately, a kindergartner, first grader, or younger students to ask to be logged in for a day in that type of schedule would be very challenging. So some of their virtual days would have to look differently and more similar to doing some at-home type work rather than being logged in. So that's slightly different. I also want to say with the cohort schedule, obviously there are challenges with this schedule as well, and I want to specifically mention those challenges with elementary. I think for elementary, the challenge trying to follow this schedule obviously is childcare, parent work schedules. And then we know it's important for consistency for all kids, but especially our youngest learners, having a consistent schedule is really important for learning. So I just want to mention that there are some more significant challenges, I believe, at elementary in this model. Not that there are not at middle school, but, again, age and developmentally, it would be a little bit more challenging with all of those pieces. So in reviewing all 3 of these options, just in summary, again, high school, current A/B schedule, additional option distance learning. In middle school and elementary, currently face-to-face. We talked about that A/B schedule. And then also distance learning, and we talked about how really it would be very different from the spring as we transition into distance learning this fall. So, and again, Michelle, I just wanted to go back to your question too. At elementary, when it's a little bit slightly different to when they are a student's quarantine and logging in, they do specifically log in more targeted towards reading and math. So because again, that's a longer day for them. So I just want you to know that's a little bit more of the target focus at the elementary level. But again, they have access to Seesaw and they have access to the assignments every day as well. So at this time, that is the summary, and I will respond to questions or any questions you have for all of us at this time.
Thank you very much. I just want to, in my mind, clear on how I'm looking at these different methods of instruction. So in the beginning, I understand elementary, we decided face-to-face. That was, but now high school, it was choices to the parents and students to go face-to-face or actually go to virtual school, the virtual school, RISE.
Yes.
And I thought we also had a hybrid in there, right?
Yes, you are correct. Thank you.
So is that still existing or
Yes.
where does
So,
that?
Yes, so I thank you for acknowledging that as well, because yes, that's not on there, but we currently have some students at the high school and middle school who attend some of their classes, at the high school or middle school and attend some through a RISE, and that's the hybrid. That's not offered for elementary, but that still is available and will be available.
Okay.
And
Thank
Kevin,
you.
just to clarify, Arise is available for elementary students as well. So it's K-12.
Okay.
Yes, so they have that as a distance learning option currently.
Okay.
It's,
And then, so I also understand that there was a time frame to sign up for the virtual school, and that doesn't open up again until semester. Is that correct?
For
Right? What's that?
Right, for high school, it's
Yes.
semester, but elementary has the ability to change. It doesn't have to be at semester. They get one change, they can flip to one change, but it doesn't have to be at semester.
And middle school, though, is semester as well as high school? Middle school, anytime as well?
Middle school anytime as well, too.
Okay, thank you. And then I'm just, I had a great thank you for having time to talk with the superintendent the other day. So I'm just I'm sorry. I was confused about how I talked about the difference between virtual and distance. So I'm trying to define that in my own mind, that when I say, or I think most of the time when we talk virtual, we're talking a RISE.
Yes.
Or actual enrollment in virtual school, where distance learning, in my mind, correct me if I'm wrong, is a temporary pivot or a temporary tool used for providing education. It's supposed to be temporary, right? Distance learning,
Yes, I mean,
as much as we have control over any of that, but.
right. I also,
Right, so,
yes.
so distance learning could be what I've seen is usually a couple weeks at a time, but it could be as much as, that's where I'm wondering, do we have it's tough to tell, right? It could be a month, it could be 2 months, it could be the whole semester, unless you're going to enroll in, okay. That's all I wanted to make sure I had those concepts clear in my mind. Thank you.
And the distance learning is more from the classroom teacher, whereas at Arise is the virtual curriculum. So they're not engaging with the teacher. They're using a online curriculum, whereas it's our teachers delivering the curriculum. So that's kind of the difference as well between what we call distance learning and what we call virtual.
So when it comes, I'm sorry, thank you. So when it comes to content of a particular class or curriculum. If we say Math 101, I don't even know if there's Math 101. You got Math 101 virtual in the virtual school for the same grade. And then we say, oh, but you got distance learning for the same Math 101. Is that the same? It's not the same.
So the
content. I know the delivery might be different, but
the content is different as well because they're two different curriculums. Arise uses the Florida virtual curriculum, and so we have our district adopted curriculum. What I will say is they both are aligned to standards and the same standards.
that would have been a better way for me to ask that. Yes. All right. Thank you.
You exceeded your limit of 3 questions.
At a time or? Oh,
Could you clarify, when we're talking about high school, that you're talking about Parker and Craig? And could you share what's happening with Tagos, Rock River, and Rock University High School?
Sure. We met today with the charter schools as well. And so, they do have their own governing board. So they obviously are listening to the decision that will happen tonight. And then they would take that back to their schools and board as well.
But the decisions we're making tonight do not directly affect those. They directly affect Parker and Craig. Correct? And one of the things we had discussed on Monday was one of the thoughts, if one subsection of our district or more moved to virtual, that may allow us to leverage some of the substitute teachers that are used in one location. For instance, high school could then be used in other middle or elementary schools. Does that sound logical? Or we could ask Scott if he's still there.
I actually have some data on
Okay.
that, if I might.
Oh, that'd be great.
Because I think we have a little sample of that happening right now with Marshall and Craig. Two of our, not the two biggest, but our biggest and our third biggest schools in the district are on virtual right now. Our sub rate for the last 2 days, small sample size, right? But the sub fill rate for teachers for the last 2 days in the rest of the district has gone up to 70%, with those 2 schools pivoted closed. And the fill rate's still low, but better than 5% that we saw on Tina's chart before. It's 25% for paras. So again, whether that's an anomaly or a correlation, I guess I'll leave that up to each of you to decide.
Other questions for Allison? Michelle?
I'm going to use up my quota too tonight, I'm pretty sure. I heard it said earlier that I might have already used it up. The Arise, there's kids from Arise coming back to in-person. What does that look like? Can you quantify that? Can you explain it?
I can. We started the school year with approximately 2,600 kids. These are both round numbers, not exact numbers, because Commissioner Murray and I talked about this on Monday morning, so I actually went and looked because I wasn't 100% sure. We're approximately at 2,100 kids right now at Arise, so about, and some kids have gone from regular school to Arise, and some have gone from Arise back to in-person school. The net effect of those movements both ways is approximately 500 across the K-12 spectrum that have gone back to in-person instruction.
And do we know
They're fairly proportional in terms of the distribution. It's fairly proportional across the grade levels.
And then why? It just wasn't a good fit? They weren't able to...
It's a wide variety of reasons. I think particularly with younger kids, and as much as we tried to communicate when the sign-up registration process was going on, that particularly if you have a little one at home, you have to have an adult who's going to be able to be there interacting, engaging all day long. And then, of course, there's wild variation from one child to the next, even as a middle school or high school student in terms of how independently they're going to be able to learn. And reading levels come into play because it's a reading dense program, and rigor comes into play. And so it's different for every child.
I struggle, and this is something I think about a lot, obviously having 3 kids in the district, and I have empathy for the staff, and I know everyone's under stress. But we also have a promise to offer engaged and empowered learning in this district, and I think that's got to come first and foremost. And So when a lot of the communications we got today were on staff and teaching from home if there's distance learning happening. I guess I could see how some can do that. One of my son's teachers is doing that right now, for fourth grade. But how are you guys looking at that if for like a chemistry teacher or an art and phys? When they've got to have materials and a board, how are you guys looking at that subject?
We had shared out at the beginning of the year with staff some of the expectations that we would be looking at having them in the building.
Right.
We were in distance learning so that they have access to those resources, not only the
Right.
physical resources, it also creates consistency for students to be able to feel like they're in their school environment.
Right. Yeah. So that's
well-
the same. That's
Yes,
not
that's-
changing.
Yes.
Okay. Yeah. Because when you get that, they would say, because I feel like I'm at risk if I go to school. Well, if the kids are distance, there's less people in your school for the risk. So I didn't understand that. So thank you for clarifying that is still an expectation. Because I know, there's got to be a lot of classes that need equipment that is district owned and there. Thank you for asking about the sub-stress. It sounds like, with Craig and Marshall virtual, distance, that has helped out things. Because I have a concern about elementary going to distance, or even A day, B day, Allison, like you said, the confusion of A day, B day. Oh my lordy. But, gosh, even distance is, with the transportation and parents have to work and is anybody even there at home to support the little youngster? And can they sit at a computer for even that long or know when to log in and have that support there? So, that would be a hard one to support.
And we do, as I mentioned, we've had a couple elementary schools.
Yeah.
So they've been able to use that new instructional
Distance.
delivery model distance that
Yeah.
definitely has been strengthened.
How would we handle students with IEPs or disabilities if we go to distance in any of these models or even A day, B day?
Sure. Yes, we've talked about that, and so Kim can speak more specifically about special ed, but we would also consider something similar to what Kim will discuss with EL and other possible at-risk situations.
Okay.
So to start with, I just want to clarify that last year when the Department of Health Services and the governor ordered all of the schools shut down, that no school was allowed to bring any group of student into the building for instruction up until July 1st of this year. So while it feels that the district was depriving students with special education needs from their education and from their services, we did not have a choice. It was very clear through the Department of Public Instruction and the Health Services that no instruction and not even educational evaluations could take place until July 1st when a local decision was made. Currently, the law reads that even if a school board decides to close a district down for a period of time or for an entire school year to go distance, that unless the health department says absolutely no one can be in that building, that special education students can come in for their services. So for each of the schools that we've had to pivot to distance, what the teachers have done is they've looked at those students and they've really looked to see whether or not the student can access the curriculum and can they meet their goals through distance learning. And then it's determined whether or not students should come in. So for example, our self-contained early childhood students, who are typically our 3 and 4-year-olds, have been coming in for in-person instruction during their designated time and following their regular schedule. The high school right now with Craig being distance, our students in the Intellectual Disabilities program are coming in every day to get instruction from their teachers. And when we were doing the AB schedule, some of our students who have a specific learning disability, for example, would come in on their off day because they needed that face-to-face help to have homework read to them or completed, or they needed reteaching. And some students maybe came in for an hour, some came in for 2, some came in for 3, some were there for a half day. So the special ed teachers do a phenomenal job of looking at those individual teachers, reaching out to the parents. And sometimes we have parents who just don't feel comfortable having their child come in, but that's their choice. But they're at least reaching out and having that conversation and giving those students that opportunity to come in so they can keep progressing towards their goals and closing those gaps.
Thank you very much.
Mm-hmm.
That's all for now.
Anyone else? One question I would have, and this isn't for tonight's decisions necessarily, but Laura made a good point when she spoke earlier about sixth graders, and we'll say the unique characteristics of sixth graders for those of us who have taught sixth graders. They're not sure if they're in elementary or if they're in middle school, they're just somewhere. If we look at any of these options, is it possible, based on the way middle schools are created and all the changes we made to the curriculum over the last 5, 6, 7 years, that a subset like sixth grade could be treated differently? And would that be a manageable, assuming that we're going to be in some form of something for a while now? It's going to be for a few months, whether people like it or not, that we're going to have to do something. Is it reasonable to think that based on how the schedules are built now, that we could take sixth graders and make them their own entity?
Yeah, I mean,
I didn't warn you about this.
No, right. So I would have
That's
to
why
say
I'm
we
here.
have to do some research on that and gather some more data and information. So I wouldn't say that it's not possible, but I mean, I know other districts have done that even at, with elementary with certain levels as well too. So it is possible, but we would need to do some further research.
Well, and I think it's far more difficult in places where we're sharing staff and the kids are like in the high schools, for instance, teachers are teaching multiple levels, and our sixth graders, could they create their own entity across? And it's just, I want to put it out there because
Right, like they've
if we
done
find
with
that they're a
K2 before. Yeah.
Sure,
Yeah.
and if we find that they're, whatever we choose, if they start having problems because of what we chose, then we're not being fair to those kids. And if they need to be that group that either comes or stays or whatever, that it's possible to think about. Because I'm sure the principals watch these board meetings too, so. Other questions for Allison? Oh, you guys are quiet. Jim? No, all right. You're welcome. So that's it for you, I think. And Steve, the question I have for you is, one of the concerns that we hear across everywhere is, are the buildings clean? The Rock County Health Department makes a blanket statement that people are safer somewhere rather than in schools. I've talked to our staff, the Dave Squared, and we have 2 Daves, and Dan, and they've shared that we have things in place, that protocols. Could you share a little about that?
Yeah, we do. We have hand sanitizer stations now in every classroom. Have had pretty much since the beginning of the school year. It was a little bit of a supply chain issue on getting some of this stuff. There are spray bottles of disinfectant with, I believe, the stuff we're using right now has a 3 or 4 minute kill time, if I'm not mistaken, that staff have access to use throughout the day. Buildings are wiped down all surfaces every evening by the second shift custodial team. I think they've always done some of that, obviously, but in a more thorough way that goes certainly above and beyond the pre-pandemic protocol. I think we're definitely feeling like we're in compliance with the protocols that the health departments and the CDC recommend to us, and I think that's why they continue. If you remember one of those slides that I showed you, it had a green. That's the health department that gets to decide whether something's green, yellow, or red, not the school district rating itself. And they continue to give us a green, and frankly give us high positive feedback about not just that particular issue, but the district's ability to deliver on all of those metrics.
And Michelle, do you want to speak to, I know you received comments from one of our custodial staff?
I did, and it was just that they felt like they're doing an exceptional job and following all the protocols as well, and have everything that they need to do that successfully as well.
Thank you. And I had several parents contact me. As I'm sure we all did, I had multiple 5-minute that turned into 30-minute conversations, and they're extremely pleased with how staff are reacting to things and doing their very best. They understand the stress, but they understand that everybody's doing the best they can. And then, Steve, the other thing before we move on to 2.2, could you share the health department is recommending a 2-week hiatus after the holiday. The board is considering a longer hiatus than that. Can you share our rationale behind that, please?
Yeah, absolutely. One of the things that we've learned through the process of having to pivot, a handful of different schools that we've identified earlier this evening in and out of virtual learning is, there's a transition into that, and there's a transition out of that, and so there's you end up losing some instructional time really as you're trying to phase in or phase out. The staff has to retool how it's teaching, and students have to retool how they're learning, and that happens on both ends of going in or out. And so when we look at the calendar right now, if we were to follow, and again, that's an if, right? It's still to be decided, but if we were to decide at any level to go to distance learning and honor the 2-week minimum that the health department has recommended to us, we would be, coming back to school. I don't have a calendar in front of me, but literally for 7 days, right? So we'd pivot to virtual, transition. We'd do that for 2 weeks. We'd pivot back to face-to-face, transition for 7 days. Then we'd have the holiday break, and then we're being asked to be back to virtual again for 2 weeks off of the winter break, pivot back to virtual coming off of the break, and then if miraculously numbers were good, like I'd like to hope they will be, but in all honesty, we don't know that. In middle of, January 19th or whatever that date is, then that's a lot of pivots and a lot of transitions. And I've talked very specifically with our staff and with parents and kids, and they've all said, look, if we're going to transition to something, that makes no sense to be going in and out that frequently over this holiday period. Everybody I've talked to, whether it's a principal, teachers, students, or parents, had said, if we're going to go there, then just make it consistent, from November 30th until whenever we think we can come back in January.
So I don't have a specific question. And I'm looking at the agenda here. So I thought I would share some of my thoughts now because my thoughts kind of go, hit on all of these, if that's okay. Okay, so.
We are planning on addressing them one at a time.
Right, but mine kind of,
Go for it.
so this is my manifesto. Okay.
You only get one of those.
Yeah, I'm making it a good one, I think.
Okay.
And I've been thinking about this obviously a lot, and I'm living this. And first thing I want to say is that I can't say enough about my admiration for the administration and the teachers and the staff and everything that they've been trying to do. And and I know that Superintendent Pufall likes to kind of apologize to the board, for this. He keeps saying, well, I'm really sorry you have to make this decision. You didn't ask for this. But, that's same thing is true for everybody that works here as well. And so, none of us asked for this. This is, again, as I said the other day, this is possibly the hardest things I've had to think about, the hardest decisions I've had to make, and I've been on the board for 7 years. When we were talking about this summer, we were talking about in person, and with the option to go virtual and the hybrid options and things like that. We talked about it as an opportunity for parents to have a choice which I think is great. But I personally took a different take on that. I kind of viewed it as something for people who had no choices, and people that couldn't leave their kids home, because of in my mind, the failure of a lot of people, by the way, to make it possible for them to take care of themselves and their families, and failure for massive testing right away and quick results and all that kind of stuff, and and I feel terrible that we are at this point. Commissioner Herta last week was talking about the conversation we were having. She was hearing a lot of people say me and I and not a lot of we. And I think that I feel that that's one of the reasons why we're here, is that a lot of people are about me and I and not about we. The data in the summer was good, like you pointed out. And to me, even though I thought it was possible that we might have to go virtual, the opportunity that it lent us to establish relationships with our kids was an opportunity I thought we had to take at the time. And, so those relationships I thought would be better in helping us make that transition to a virtual or distance learning, if it had to come down to that. And obviously the data now is far more dire than it was last summer. So I've got experience with all of this. I am teaching 2 in-person classes that are on an ABA schedule. And I am teaching 3 remote classes, which meet daily. And then I am coaching an online class, a virtual class. So that's that difference that you were talking about. I don't call it teaching. The curriculum's already made for me, but I am grading all their stuff and trying to keep moving them forward and having conversations with them. And let me just say that this is possibly the hardest year I've ever had. This is far more difficult than my very first year of teaching. And I'm not afraid of stress. I ran for Congress and worked and served on the board simultaneously. I am used to being incredibly busy and stressed out, but this is way, way more than I ever thought. I could not have anticipated this. I knew it was going to be stressful, but I could not have anticipated this and the challenges that all of this stuff has created in my classroom. I didn't anticipate that this summer. I knew it was going to be hard, but I didn't think it was going to almost break me. And that's how I feel almost every day that I'm at work. So right now, I have to say that I am, not in favor, obviously, of daily in-person classes. I think it's dangerous. And I think that our experience, especially at the high school, kind of proves that. And I'm going to tell you that those alternate days, those aren't ideal. That's lost time with kids. Honestly, it's like every day's Monday or the day after a long holiday. That's what it's like every time. And of course, it's a nightmare for planning. I will say that Janesville, I think, has at least a more humane schedule than my school does. By not doing ABA. And I really appreciate that. And the virtual or the remote thing is not ideal either. Now, there are some students that flourish, but it is not the conversation about switching to a virtual situation or a remote situation is not anything we should do it with any sort of a cavalier attitude, because it's a big deal. It is a really big deal. And those students that are accustomed to interventions, especially our IEP students, really are struggling. And even those who don't necessarily need interventions or never thought that they ever needed them, it's still not great. On a daily basis, I have kids that will leave my remote class. Like 1 minute their emoji is there, and the next minute it's gone. And I've got 25 other kids that I've got to do something about or with and keep going. There are tons of tech issues and connectivity issues every single day. There's the expectation issues. Darn it. There's the expectation issues that kids don't realize that you have to show up. Like, it is class, it is school. Your cousin cannot be there with you in class with me. You cannot order food in the middle of class, and or go out for food. You cannot take class while you are driving your car. Okay, all those things. I have become a tech specialist. It's like a new job description for me. And at the same time, those virtual kids, I think, are starved for interaction. And, so the concerns that all these parents and all of us have had are absolutely valid. Even my AB kids will tell me that on the days that they are not in class, but they're supposed to be doing something, I assign something for them. Their parents will ask them to babysit. Their parents will ask them to run certain errands instead of working on their classwork. And I'm not saying that as a criticism. I think the expectation issue has been as much for parents as it has been for students. And I got to tell you, if I was still a parent of a high school kid and I had somebody who could run a quick errand for me while I'm at work, I might do it too, but it's still not a good idea. I think my in-person kids are doing better than my remote kids, but this year is a year of trade-offs and sacrifices. I've said that before. And I don't want to sacrifice anybody's education, but I don't want to put their families at risk. I think we did in August what we voted on in August. We did what community members wanted. I think it was the right decision at that moment, but I think the data is so different now. And so I personally am leaning toward a pivot to virtual for the high schools until January. And I agree that transition to go back for 7 days is just going to be even more chaotic. And again, remote learning is not ideal. It's not optimal, but I think that I noticed that the percentage of infection and cases is about the same at the high school as it is for the middle and elementary schools, and they still went AB, and it's still there. And so I think that that's got to happen for them. And I was so glad to hear about the accommodations for our students who are at risk or who have IEPs and special needs, because to me that was like, if that's in place, that's kind of what I needed to hear tonight. If that's in place, I can, and I know that those kids are going to be able to come in and get face-to-face attention and, of course, reduce the number of people in a building and make it much safer. I just feel much more comfortable about it there. I am glad to hear that the district agrees that expectations should stay high and that we are not going to go to pass fail, that grades are going to count. And I'm hoping that, and I'm probably overstepping my bounds here for what is expected of a board member. But I hope that there are going to be humane late policies in place and attendance policies, because again, those kids are going to have a hard time figuring out what the expectation is. I know that I'm dealing with a lot of kids that this fall that thought it was like last spring. Where at least in Illinois where I teach, you did not, they could not be. You could not give them a 0 if they didn't turn something in. It wasn't that it was pass fail; it was still grades. But if they didn't turn something in, there was no penalty. So that a lot of kids just stopped, and a lot of them thought that we were still doing that this year. As far as like elementary and middle school, my thoughts are about going to the AB schedule. And I'm wondering if that would help reduce that percentage with those groups, because we haven't tried that there yet. I hope it will drive that percentage down. And because I also believe that they should, they need the contact, I really do. I mean, I'm still very concerned about them, but I think that the data I think just shows that there's not been. I think maybe going to an AB type schedule with them might bring the percentage down and make it better. I mean, I'm willing to accept the AB schedule at middle school and elementary school for that very reason. I am not a fan of simulcasting your classes. I think it's risky. I think that the potential to harm a student's privacy is there. You never know who's in the classroom with the child, who's at home. And I think that you should, on those days that they are not in person, I think there should be some activity or thing that they should do. But I don't believe that they should be sitting in front of a screen. I don't think it's healthy for them. And I also don't think that, again, I think that, it's like if I have to discipline a student in my class, and perhaps even in front of other students, that's like within this group of 25. But if it's potentially, online, then everybody's involved. And I just think that is asking for real trouble and potential harm to some of our kids. I would also, ask that if there's and I know I'm overstepping my bounds here again, but that if, when we give a student a lesson to do at home, on something they can do on their own, I guess I just want us to remember that we teach kids, I mean, I know we talk curriculum a lot, but we really teach kids. And that if we focus more on the social, emotional, even, while we're in this situation, I think that we'll be far better. And I also think that the faculty should have an option of teaching from home. I know that's not necessarily popular, but this is temporary. But, faculty have families too. I'm not going to be able to see my parents or my children over Thanksgiving. Maybe not even for Christmas, because of where I work, because my parents are elderly, because there are health issues. And I hate that I live several hours away from them. By the way, I really admire my mother's ability to adapt to video chat. Got to give her some props for that, because that's not easy when you're 83. And I think that's about the only thing that's keeping them sane right now. It still stinks. But I think that doing these things, we talk about our promises. I think that does fulfill one of our promises, which is health and safety of our students. And I know that some people are going to be mad at us. I don't want us. I hope that nobody's going to be mad at the district. I think that we've done everything we can to prevent this. But I think we also need to keep in mind that this too shall pass. And this is a temporary situation that for a few weeks, this is temporary. Illness and death are permanent. And so I would ask that everybody, remember that we're all in this together, and we're all going to try to do whatever we can, what's best for our kids, given the situation that we're in at the moment. So that's my thing.
All right,
Thank
so
you.
based on your comments, Kathy, I would entertain a motion to approve pivoting Craig and Parker High Schools to distance learning beginning November 30th through January 15th, 2021.
I'll second.
No, you're going to make the motion.
Oh, I'm making the motion, yes.
Second.
I make that motion.
Second by Carl. So we have a motion from Kathy, a second by Carl. And then discussion on this part of the topic would be helpful because these are designed specifically because they could be different for each level. So other comments on Craig and Parker? We already heard from the superintendent, a lot of background information. Go ahead, Michelle.
So I have two at Craig, and so I can tell you that it's actually going very well with the, in my opinion, distance is going very well. It's actually a condensed schedule. Kathy, I'm not sure if you knew that. It's not until 3:28. It's 1:25. And so they're condensed, but it's every day. And I mean, they're truly doing well. I hear discussions because I'm working from home too most days. And I hear discussions upstairs. They're talking, they're engaging. It's going actually very, very well the way distance is happening right now. That's the only reason I want everybody face to face. More than anything, but and I will not agree for elementary in that. But related to high school, I will agree for them to go to distance until January 15th, only because I see how successful it's going now and that they are still getting that engagement every single day. Because not only is a promise that we will give them an engaged and empowered learning environment, we're also going to know them by name, strength, and need. And with all the mental health issues that we could be seeing, and we are seeing, I think that daily connection and, in that time with the different teachers and seeing their peers will help with that. So someone's at least talking to them daily. But I just wanted you to know it's not a full day. It's
What did you say the time is?
1 till 1:25.
Go ahead. Just short.
Yeah, it's 8:30.
1:45. So we made adjustments after the first time because we realized we needed to. So yeah, it's definitely
Period, just
30 minutes.
30 minutes, good. Yeah, if I may. In my district, I'm expected to teach the full 50 minutes. And although wink and a nod, they say if you need to adjust that, but as a professional. And so I might have a day that I do kind of spend a lot of time with them, but then the other days, short activities, follow up, that kind of stuff. And so I try not to, I try to avoid that full 50-minute thing as much as I can. So that's good to know. I did not know that. Thank you.
Additional comments on high school? Dale?
So the motion on the floor is to go to distance learning for both high schools until January 15th, whatever. And in all due respect, I'm not going to support the motion. I'm uncomfortable. I'd be more comfortable with A and B. There are kids that simply being home virtually or being at home distance doesn't cut it. I mean, every kid is different. And I've talked to a number of kids, so I would be much more comfortable with A and B than distance. So for that reason, I'll vote against the motion. Thank you.
Sorry, you know what? I loved when we were AB. 'Cause I thought it was successful. We had a really good day of learning, and then came home and they had a really good part of their day of follow up and homework. So I would love to if we could do that, but I just don't know how with the numbers that we got today for high schools. That's my only holdup is, if I agree. I don't think it makes sense to go back for the 1 week or the 7 days. I mean, I loved AB. I thought that was really good. But if we have to do something because of the numbers, the distance is okay. Gosh, what was I going to say? Shoot. What else? I'll think of it. Sorry.
My second comment is when we finish this section, can we have a break? I need one. Thank you.
Sorry, I thought of a question. And that is that the expectation is staying the same. The Craig and Parker staff would report to their classrooms and teach from there. Thank you.
And I don't know if Kim or Allison would like to speak, but if students are identified that are extreme cases of struggling, we have a way to reach out to those students. Is that factual? So we do have a way, Dale, to, during this time period, unfortunately, this is a trial period where staff are able to make adjustments because the expectation would be there will be some type of continuation of something unless something magical happens on January 15th. So I would note that our next board meeting is January 12th, which is prior to when this will expire. So the staff know that they're going to continue to work on how are things working in any of these models so we make adjustments. What are you smiling about?
Nothing.
They know, don't they, Steve? Yes, they do. All right, any other comments or questions on the high school? Yes, Carl?
Yeah, this is, as Kathy said, not an easy decision, and I think we've all struggled with it and that. But one of the things, you're talking high school now, but I think it filters down into the other areas. So we're only voting on one thing, but I'd like you to keep in mind. One of the things, if we look on the back wall, are the 5 pillars. And one of the most important parts, of course, is student success. But right now we have something violating our schools. And that's for our health and safety must be stronger. And also the one thing is, I want to change the name of a virus. This is a plague. This is horrid. It's a plague out there. Our skin isn't rotting off, any of that stuff. Although some people are having problems, very bad problems. So I like to think more of it. Today we achieved a milestone in this country of 250,000 people dead. And had we perhaps reacted better at a national, state, and local and individual way, we might not have had as much of an impact on it. I don't know. The big thing is because there's no federal or very little, the state is a mix-up. It leaves it up to individuals. If you remember in the hallways, we had children out there. And I remember people saying, they'll do it right, they'll take care of it. Those children didn't. They sat on top of each other. They didn't have their mask on half the time. We had parents the same way. And there's some other issues which I won't bring out that we found out later, which backs up the horrors of how we conduct ourselves as individuals, at least some of us. I'm not trying to blame everyone. I run into people, my neighbor today. Hey, I'm an adult, I can make my own decision. I said, well, then just stay across the street until this is over. I want to be friends with you. I mean, this is a good friend. That's the way it is. We can't wait for that magic bullet, the vaccine. It's coming. Something is coming. But even when it gets here, half the people won't take it. Thanks to the things that are out there. And that. People, as I heard, and I go back to what you said, Lisa, and I see it in the letters. Except the staff is a little bit better at it. About the we is omitted. Well, somebody's got to be an adult in the room. And we can only control our part, but we have to convey to the others. It isn't just all these different situations. I mean, I got another stack of letters to go with the old one with sports. It's all, this doesn't fit into my schedule. This doesn't do that. I know it doesn't. I know very much. And I wish we could do something for daycare and the other things that are necessary. I wish we could prompt companies to, or the government to pay unemployment or money and things to do till we get over this. But they won't. They say adults and children will do what is correct. They don't. I have friends all around me that are testing positive, and I have to avoid them. Starting this weekend at work, I'm not only going to wear a mask, I'm going to wear a shield because people don't care about me like I care about them. And that's tiring. Now, we get these figures in the district, and we get the figures around, and here's the daily thing today. As Greg likes to hear, as I do, want to know what's happening. However, I ask you, what is the threshold? 1, 2, 5, 10, 50, 100? At what threshold do we react? Fortunately, in the district, we have no deaths known at this point, but we have a lot of ill people. Our county has a lot of deaths. Right now, 62. The state has, and added another 101 so far today, almost 3,000. That's sad. We could make a difference if we would. If we could convince them that they don't have to prove that they're macho or anything else. But anyway, we do have that ability to save lives and that. I care about our children. I care about our staff, and everyone here does. And I want that to out no matter what we decide or how we feel about it. We do. The teachers, the parents, the community, the county, and all others. We care about that. But we have to do more. We look at things how from the direction of what do the children carry into the district, into the schools. But we better look out for what are the kids taking out of the schools. That's important. I believe what Kathy said about no simulcasting. I think that's not good. We don't want to, children have problems now. We don't need to add to that pile on them. And I'm going to tell you, as far as buddy type of thing and that, it's out there. They're going to occur. Fraternizing will occur. It'll occur mornings. It'll occur at night. It'll occur spare time and weekends and holidays. And this particular thing we're going through will give a lot of free time to the different children. I could go on for hours. I feel we have to step up and be something in that. So I'll stop it right there, and you'll kind of feel how I feel, so it should fall all the way through. But right now we're on the one part, but I'm not going to repeat it again for each one. Thank you, everyone.
Well, I appreciate that, Carl. I did share with the board that I did take the time and I watched the 3-hour board meeting, and you all shared very valid points, and I appreciated that. And I think the community did too, and they've shared ideas with us. So we have a motion on the floor from Kathy, a second by Carl to approve pivoting Craig and Parker High School to distance learning from November 30th through January 15th, 2021. Any other comments or questions? Denise, could we have a roll call, please?
Carter? Yes. Millard?
Yes.
Murray?
Yes?
Myers?
Yes.
Thompson?
No.
Ardrey?
Yes.
Damershausen?
Yes.
Hayward? Yes. Who?
Yes. That carries 8-1. We have a 7-minute break. The other 5 after.
Now you Tom.
Huh? Getting to that point that getting to the point that you take me out That's a good thing. No, I didn't say that. No, I don't. Oh, I see. Yeah. But that's just like the intelligent community saying that, teachers shouldn't be paid as much because virtual is more easier.
You need some weight in there, Kathy, so it doesn't be thrown around. That's the problem.
I know.
Um, 3.1 future meeting dates is after 2.6.
Okay, yeah, that's us.
So the musical interlude will be provided.
Nice. Oh, nice, Tina. Are you gonna play something for us?
Just hanging. Thought I'd
Does that
check
mean
in
if
real
you
quick.
play the instrument, Scott has to then join in and sing?
Oh, no, that's totally Tina. I did not sign up for that.
Oh, but you have to be
Though I do have
flexible.
a somewhat deeper voice now with a little bit of a congestion I have, so I could be a baritone or something.
It would still qualify though, Scott and Tina, as entertainment.
Always.
Well,
I think we're talking about opposite sides. If I were to sing versus Tina, you would definitely be entertained, but completely differently.
Are we still being televised?
yes, sure.
That's supposed to be. Does he know that he doesn't have to broadcast the recess?
Well, we just talked about entertainment. Tina was gonna play something and Scott's gonna sing. I know.
There it is.
I only did it because of the sub shortage. Only because of the sub shortage, I wanna help. Otherwise, that AV was great.
That's the first time
Yep.
But the Milton, Milton Records, Evansville, Whitewater, Delavan, and the Thousand Planty and the others, they contract with Teachers on Call. It's called Teachers on Call.
Yeah. Shanza was telling me about this.
They do all of it.
Yeah.
They handle the payroll.
Yes.
They do contacting, the schedule, they do, and the young gal that I talked to, called me on the phone, I've had 2, telephone, interviews.
Yeah.
And she's guiding me through the whole thing. Yeah, it was.
Yeah, Rebecca Shenzel and I walked sometimes, and she was telling me about that.
I didn't know you were friends with the Shannons at home.
Oh, yeah. They've got boys in mind, yeah.
Kevin,
Yep.
you gotta stay lower profile like we do,
For what? What do you mean?
then you don't get all the phone calls.
Well. Yeah, I've always got phone calls. Been around a long time, so.
You gotta say and do what you think.
Yeah.
And I respect.
As long as it's the truth, and, well,
It's within yourself what you believe.
But it's not delivery system, so it's a little far.
Why can't we do it?
Oh, we are.
I thought we were.
Okay, thank you.
And that's fine. The question is why.
My head doesn't explode this year.
I think the stage is fine. fine.
Yeah, and so I'll ask you to email
But if you somehow jump out of a moving car, I'll understand.
Make sure the
Read about me in the
rationale
news. So she's saying it's because an administrative regulation?
Yeah. And then we can push, we do
That's
that.
what I was
Okay,
saying.
thank you.
That's
Sorry.
what I meant when I said I might be overstepping my bounds.
But it would still be December 8th or something, 6th or something.
That was the night of Santa Claus calls.
We are back in session. We're on item 2.3, which is a consider approval to implement an alternate schedule or go to distance learning at the middle school. So, would someone like to provide a motion for one of those two models, either the AB schedule or virtual?
I'd like to make, can I?
You bet.
All right. Make sure I'm on the right, here we go.
So, I'm sorry, Kevin, it's between an alternate schedule or a distance learning schedule or traditional learning. Those are your, kind of your three options.
I'd like to make a motion to have middle schools pivot to distance learning from November 30th through January 15th.
Seconded.
Okay. There's a motion and a second. So you're not talking about an alternate AB schedule, you're talking about complete distance learning. Okay. So there's a motion and a second to move the middle school from the current schedule to distance learning from November 30th through January 15th. Motion is by Kevin, second is by Carl. Discussion. Michelle.
This is one I cannot support. I think by moving Craig and Parker to distance learning, we are taking a big step at alleviating the stress on our sub pool. And I'd like to see them continue as they have been in face-to-face learning as long as we can.
And just to clarify, Allison, the alternate schedule, the AB schedule would reduce the population in the school by half, is that correct, at the middle school level? Any given day? All right, so, just so people understand, the options, three options again, one isn't up there, but the AB schedule that was presented tonight would reduce the number of students in contact in the district, in that school by 50%. Distance would be moving them all except special needs students. Other comments? Dale?
I'm not in support of Kevin's motion. I would be more inclined to support Michelle, although I would agree to an A-B schedule. Thank you. For the reasons I stated before.
Thanks. Yeah, I was torn on this middle school one. But the more I thought about it, we're off for the Thanksgiving break and we're off for the holiday break. And, I believe we all need to take some time after each break because of what we're faced with. And I just don't see any value of starting up for the week, even at middle school, even though in my heart, I feel the younger I start to address these things, it's going to be more difficult for me to say distance. But this one was a toss-up for me, so that's why I made that motion.
Other comments? Carl?
I said I wouldn't, but I will. I have one thing to add, and that is just to look. And the thing, November student data is just a snapshot, and that's all it is. But if we take a look at it from summer on out, the cases and the students out have been increasing. And there's nothing that says they won't continue to increase. And to put them back into the classroom after Thanksgiving and after Christmas, when you know that adults, a lot of them are getting together to do things, just family and that, not immediate. They're not going to do it the proper manner. I suspect that things will come back into the schools then, and this will increase more rapidly. It's not a long period of time, and I think we have to test that, allow that to stay there till we see where we are in January. So thank you.
Allison and/or Kim, could you clarify for me, the high school principals were part of the discussion creating the alternate schedule, is that correct?
The current AB every other day face-to-face schedule?
For middle school, yeah.
Yes.
Okay, they were engaged in that conversation?
Yes.
Okay, thank you. Kathy?
So I share your concern with this because this one I'm really having a hard time with myself because, middle schoolers are babes, and having that kind of contact, I think, in person is really important. And so I've been kind of leaning toward the AB schedule with them. But I am, but that includes, and please correct me if I'm wrong, that includes that when they are home, that they're online watching, right? That still includes that. It does not.
Oh, yes, it does.
Yes, it does?
Craig Parker did not, but
I'll turn mine on.
Craig Parker did not do that, but the middle school, and as Steve asked, we worked with the middle school principals and looked at different models from other districts. And so that is something that the middle school students would do in that AB model. So they would be logging in actually beginning second period. First period is advisory. And so they'd be using a live link to log in. And so the middle school principals had also shared this model that they discussed with staff as well. So they are aware of the model that's being discussed tonight.
so I'm logging on to my 8 classes during the day. I really appreciated this handout.
Sorry. I really appreciated this handout, like taking it from the perspective of a student. So that concerns me, you know. I mean, I understand where it comes from, but that concerns me a lot because, you know, the idea that for 8 hours a day they're going to be logging in to a class, I just don't think that that's optimal. And I keep thinking that, you know, again, as we've been saying, this is short term. This is not forever. This is short term. And if it keeps kids and families, and keep in mind that kids don't have control over whether they go to Thanksgiving or not, right? And so, you know, this is not blaming them or anything like that for what might happen, but they don't have any control over that. So so the motion is to go virtual, right? I'm inclined to support it because of that. And because I think also if they go totally virtual, and maybe we don't have an answer to this, they're the same sort of discretion about how much time they are online will be there, right?
They will follow the middle school and high school. We worked with the middle and high school principals together to create the current virtual schedule Craig is using right now. So middle school will use the exact same one. So I also wanted to add to your question about the logging in during the class periods. They did to reduce some of their conversation and reducing some of that screen time would be that the kids would log in for the direct initial instruction time, but then they could log off to do the work offline before going to their next period. So they are aware exactly of what you're talking about, the concerns. We talked about that quite a bit.
Okay, thank you. I'm still leaning toward the virtual thing because of that. So.
Thank you. Any other comments? Yeah, Michelle.
I know, a shocker, right? So I feel, you know, the cases are lower in the middle school. They're in their pods, you know, green team, red team, blue team, together for the day. We've got the deep cleaning happening. And I don't think it's fair to speculate what behaviors are going to happen next weekend by any family member, or any family. So I don't think it's fair to speculate that of anybody. And, but I wanted to clarify the dates, Kevin, because you're saying November 30th through January 15th. I wouldn't support. I think we could go, you know, if we were to go keep face to face there, I would say, you know, starting November, like continuing, like no pause in that, just to clarify for the reasons I just stated.
Other comments? Kathy, mic's still on.
Sorry.
I would share that what I've heard from all of you and what I saw on TV on Saturday when I watched the replay, the reality is, as Kathy said, middle schools are their own unique group, particularly sixth graders. And I don't believe they are prepared to move to the virtual format. I trust the leadership team, and I trust the principals at those three schools have worked hard on an AB format. If they came back from Thanksgiving break and there was a spike at one school, they would do the same thing they're doing right now, which is Marshall is pivoted to virtual right now. So we already have that protocol in place. If nobody behaves at Thanksgiving, which is out of the school board's control, I can't manage that. What I can manage is my concern for instructional integrity for those kids. And I do not see how we can have instructional integrity full virtual for that period of time right now, even though other districts are doing it, because they've created a model that reduces the population in the school by half and they believe will work. I would like to let them try that. And I mean, I fortunately have had time to speak to a couple of them and they'd like to try it. So that's why I cannot support going to total virtual. Any other comments, or we can vote a roll? Everybody ready? Roll call on the current motion, which is approving a distance learning schedule at the middle schools beginning November 30th through January 15th, 2021. Could we have a roll call, please?
Millard,
No.
Murray,
Yes.
Myers,
Yes.
Thompson,
No.
Ardrey,
Yes.
Dummershausen,
Yes.
Hayworth,
No.
Herda,
Yes.
Huth.
No.
Passes 5-4.
Okay, so then the middle schools will be virtual or distance learning beginning November 30th through January 15th. All right, next item is the elementary schools. Steve, do you have anything you'd like to add to the elementary information?
No, I think we've shared everything that you need to know, unless there's something we didn't share that you need to know.
Okay,
I'd like to make a motion.
go ahead.
I'd like to make a motion that we do alternative schedule for the elementary schools.
Do a second? Second by Kathy, motion by Jim. Could you explain what that looks like, Allison, please, again? What an alternate elementary schedule looks like?
Yes, so it's structured the similar way. Part of, the reason with the same cohort AB is because if middle school was in that AB, they would be on the same schedule. So again, it would be Monday, a virtual day for all students. Then in cohort A, you would be a Tuesday, Thursday, or a Wednesday, Friday. On the days they're not in school, we would not have them logging on all day. There may be different times where they could to log in or have or receive a recorded lesson, but they would be doing a lot more of at-home work similar to the high school.
No other questions? Everybody good?
Was there a second to that motion?
Yeah, Kathy seconded.
Yeah.
Carl?
Only one question, or more of a statement, if I can, unless some, no. If we look at the thing, and I have real mixed emotions on this level, because I'm not sure that virtual would work well for them. But I also noted that the elementary schools, the cases are growing there of people out and that when we look back at the scale. And that bothers me, and that more people are, because just in 3 days there's been almost a doubling. Now, a snapshot, how far back does that, go and cover? And if they have some answers, it'd help. I'm troubled with it, but more than any of the others. So thank you.
This one really bothers me more than the other two decisions that we've made. I mean, these are little kids. When we look at the promises, these are the kids we really got to get early to learning. And distance learning ain't going to cut it. There's just no way that we should be distance learning or even AB in this one. And I'm really also very concerned about childcare. What's going to happen to the single parent, people that have jobs, when we look at the data for teachers being out with childcare problems? So, no way am I going to support AB.
I agree with Dale.
Vote.
I,
Otherwise Denise would have nothing to do. Go ahead.
Dale, you can make an amendment to the motion, correct?
You can, or it can fail and we can make a new motion,
Okay.
which is far cleaner.
All right.
All right, so the motion on the floor is to go to an alternate schedule at the elementary school. You could amend your own motion if you'd like.
I don't know what I'd say, because I'd like to have I agree with Dale, but I think the kids should have more face-to-face time.
All right, would you,
It's not up to
well, no, it'd be the current model. It wouldn't be a change. You can withdraw your motion,
I respectfully withdraw the motion.
and your second needs to agree to that.
Who's the second?
Kathy? All right. So, and we do not need to vote on that.
No.
So what you're suggesting is you'd like to move, we maintain the current schedule at the elementary school.
Yeah, because I think Dale hit the nail on the head. We all know that the kids need.
Okay, is that your motion?
Yes.
Is there a second to that motion?
I'll second.
Dale, there's a second. Now go, because it's clear. I just would like it to be clear. Yes, ma'am.
A clarifying question then about the dates. It'd be effective, like there'd be no interruption.
There's no dates.
Yeah.
You're correct. It probably doesn't have to happen, but I can tell you it's probably in our best interest. You don't want to do that, Craig? Okay. For a week or two. All right, there's a motion and a second to maintain the current elementary schedule.
One schedule, we still can pivot the school, right?
Well, you can always pivot.
Excellent, thank you.
So we would continue to use the same rubrics that we use right now,
Yep.
right, that you all are familiar with, and the data would drive if we have to pivot a school to virtual based on student or staff or both data points.
Okay, and because I made Michael come to this meeting, do we need to have this motion or what's your advice?
Since you're not actually making a change, do you need to actually vote on it and have a motion and do anything? Is that the question?
That's the correct question?
I mean, ultimately, I don't know that you do. I don't know if you want to give the superintendent a vote of confidence that this is what we're supporting, you certainly can, but because there's no change, I don't think a motion is required because you're not switching instructional models.
So it's at the pleasure of the board. Would you like us to just direct that we want to continue any objection to that? Okay, then that motion's out of order. No, by me. All right? All right, moving on. So we'll direct staff to maintain and monitor for us. Thank you. Next item is the 2.5, which is consider approval to reschedule November 23 through 24 for transition planning and deep cleaning. Superintendent Pufall. And I realize this is maybe a little out of the ordinary now that elementary is continuing with current format, but I suspect you might have a plan for what we do.
Yeah. I still would recommend, obviously at 2 levels we just made a programmatic change, and so we need some transition time for those staff to really be able to, do that planning that they need to prepare for that transition. Obviously at elementary, we don't have a transition in terms of programming, but I can absolutely tell you as good of a job as our custodial team is doing, it would be good, almost a third of the way into the school year for them to really have a couple of days where they can really get into all of our schools and really go above and beyond deep cleaning and getting those surfaces cleaned. And I'll be perfectly honest, as it's been really well described here this evening, particularly by Commissioner Myers, all of our teachers are truly doing heroic work right now. They are truly going above and beyond. And that certainly includes our elementary teachers. And so for them to have a couple of days to plan and to plan ahead and to communicate, need to have information out to their parents, it would be welcomed deeply by them at this moment in time, even though the program is not changing. So I would definitely encourage you to support this particular item.
I'd entertain a motion to approve rescheduling November 23, 24, 2020 for transitional planning and deep cleaning in the district at all levels.
Second.
A motion by Greg, second by Kevin. Lisa, question?
Yeah, could you just clarify, so that'd be non-instructional days
Those would be non-instructional days. That
for
is
all
correct.
levels,
That is
elementary,
correct.
middle?
That is correct.
Okay, thank you.
And there was no instruction scheduled on Wednesday. So, right, so it was 2 days. You bet. I would also share that as we've asked the superintendent to, I hate the word pivot, but to pivot the substitutes that are up in the secondary levels that may now be working with us in the elementary schools. This is a perfect time to have those principals be introduced to some of those people, so there's good transition. And I know we also, from all of the memos and letters and emails we received, we've got some exemplary practices out there in the elementary schools that it would be great for some of those people to have a chance to share some of those thoughts, if that's appropriate. All right, we have a motion and a sec. Yeah, Kevin.
I was just curious, how does this affect our numbers of days that we need to be?
Yeah, so thank you for asking that. The Department of Public Instruction met with superintendents from across the state early in the fall. Denise actually sat in on that meeting with us, and this won't affect that this year, which would be a different answer than you would get under normal circumstances. As long as the instructional plan that the district is using, and including switching to a different one in the middle of the year like we just did at 2 levels, continues to have kids learning, the count of hours is not happening in the way that it normally would have. We have grace, if you will, from the DPI, flexibility, as we're having to transition from one program to another, or we're having to pivot in and out because of the numbers. We've been given lots of flexibility around hours. And so unless we were going to adopt, the only way we'd really need to go to the DPI for a waiver for hours during this current school year is if we were going to adopt an instructional program that we knew would come far short of delivering anything close to normal hours. So if we were going to say, well, we're going to stay in person, and we're going to do that for the rest of the year, but it's only for half days, then we would need an instructional waiver. But barring something really dramatic like that, we have flexibility.
What was the cleaning plan prior to this motion being brought up? Like what is the custodial staff working next week? I have a big concern about losing 2 instructional days. So what was the custodial staff going to be working next week?
Well, I'm not sure I'm understanding your question. If we had school,
Right.
they'd be doing their normal cleaning routine.
Routine. And Wednesday they could do
school.
deep cleaning.
If we have deep cleaning,
no
obviously there's they can do way more surface floor scrubbing, additional cleaning that you can't do if school's in place.
So they have they work on Wednesday and there's no students, so that could be a deep cleaning day.
Yep.
And teachers have planning day that day. Or are teachers off?
Teachers have a mix on that day depending on whether they worked in August or not. It's one of those days where they could flex, so some of them will be working, some of them won't be.
Okay. Do any custodial staff work on Friday? Next Friday?
No, that is a holiday.
Okay. Yeah, I don't love losing 2 instructional days, but I have an appreciation for pausing to do more thorough cleaning, and even though we've gotten emails from custodians saying we're doing a really bang up job, so all right, I'll think about it.
And when we created the agenda on Monday, the focus is transitional planning, because we are changing a delivery model and we're doing things differently when we come back from the break. And to have a quality effect on instruction, it's important for the staff to be able to do that on Monday and Tuesday without students there. So deep cleaning is another benefit, because as I've shared before, there are many schools that I've reviewed that have 1 day a week where the students are not in the schools a week. They do virtual, and the custodians go in and they bomb the place, they spray it, well, that's the wrong word. They spray it with disinfect, they fog it, thank you. So
No, I hear you on that. I guess it's just that I feel like what we've been hearing all night is that the administration's been getting ready for pivoting either way, so that they have plans to transition.
Sure. I know, I appreciate the concern about losing instructional time.
Yeah.
But, yes, Kevin.
I just reminded something that we've learned tonight, that right now, because of there's so many staff absences and such a low substitute rate, that the staff is filling in and they're exhausting their prep time. So they don't have any prep time as we're moving now, and this will give at least a day or 2 days for everybody to catch up, and not just catch up and then, so.
Any other comments? All right, roll call, Deb. No, Deb, sorry, Denise.
That's gonna happen more than once. It's gonna happen.
I saw her at noon or 11 or
That's
whatever.
actually a compliment.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Murray?
Yes.
Myers? Thompson? Ardrey?
Yes.
Damershausen?
Yes.
Hayworth?
Yes.
Herda?
Yes.
Millard?
Yes.
Huth?
Yes. That passes. One of my mistakes when I'm reading how we put agendas together. This was a topic when I watched your 3-hour meeting. There was a hot topic, and I've spent time with Michael, our attorney, to make sure that we were using Robert's rules, et cetera. There appeared to me to be some confusion because you had a long conversation about a lot of things. So now that we have pivoted both high schools to virtual for a given period of time, it basically has the effect of removing athletics practices and competitions until January 15th. So that is the effect of that. So I thought it would be appropriate to have a brief conversation. We don't need to repeat everything that was said the other night because you all heard it and I also heard it, and the superintendent and the community. So I wanted to entertain a chance to talk a little bit about, now that we've made these decisions, what is fair to students and families over the next November 30th to January 15th. And I know several board members asked to talk about that, so I'm allowing that to happen. And if there's a motion that comes out of this, there's a motion that comes out of this. Currently you have approved postponing the start of the winter athletic season to December 1st, which is now a moot point, and because it is now basically delayed until January 15th, correct? Based on the past motion. And that, and the second was the instructional delivery model, and then there was conversations about if people could attend or not attend events, et cetera, et cetera. So, yes, Kevin, did you have a comment?
So the way this agenda item's written, there's no, a motion to approve attendees would be out of line?
No, that would be in line, but you'd have to have events to have attendees, but.
Okay.
But yes, no, that would be in
So
line.
I'd like to make a motion to continue athletic activities. I don't like the word regardless, but that's regardless of instructional delivery model used.
Okay, there's a motion and a second to approve. Well, are you telling me you're allowing winter sports to continue regardless of instructional delivery method?
Correct.
Okay, second. Okay. So there's a motion and a second to continue winter athletic events, activities, which is practice and competitions, while we are in a distance learning environment. Okay. Comments? Yeah, Kevin?
Thanks. So what I did learn differently from our last discussion was that our students that are currently enrolled in a RISE or virtual school have the ability to participate in athletics and co-curricular activity, as well as any of our charter schools, or even, I believe, even if you're homeschooled, you can participate. And now that we've unanimously agreed to move to distance learning, I think that, in my opinion, gives us even more opportunity to be safe in an athletic environment. And my last comment, furthermore, in the future, I'd even be open to discussing to have athletes that choose to participate in sports be required to enroll in virtual school after the semester. But that's a whole nother topic, so I'll just say that for numbers of reasons that Commissioner Myers brought up about the need for students to be face-to-face, you know, it's the same sort of parallels that I draw with our athletes, that this serves a great purpose for that subset of individuals and families, and furthermore for the community health as well. So thanks.
When Superintendent Pufall presented earlier, he shared that it was one of the criteria of, I believe it was Orfordville, that students had to be virtual. So our students are going to be virtual. Again, reminding people that we have a meeting in December so we can review the status of how this is going with the athletes. And we have another meeting in January where we could review it again and make changes at that time. So those are two marks on a calendar that could be reviewed. Do you have a question, Kathy, or comment?
No, I was just going to say, thank you. I was just going to say, I'm still not going to support this motion. And although I think you make a good point, about the Arise situation and homeschooled kids, I'm looking at that 6 weeks of time that we are virtual, and I, like I said, it's not ideal. There's a lot of problems with it, but I want us to make sure that we get back to in person and face to face across the board as soon as possible. And my concern is that this will make it more difficult. Thank you.
I'll just repeat what I said at the last meeting, is a lot of these kids had spent months practicing off the school grounds, in groups, etc. And so I'm comfortable with letting them continue.
And one of the things that came out of the recorded message was Commissioner Domerhausen sharing that, asking the question about how do students practice? Do they practice in small groups? And I'm sure the expectation would be that that would continue to happen and be reinforced by Assistant Superintendent Garner. So go ahead, Carl.
I'm not going to support it either, because I think just this week and a half or so, about a week that's happened, hasn't shown me anything improving at all in sports. It's the people that are getting ill or passing it on, all the way from professional sports down to college sports. I mean, we're looking at their games being postponed, and high school and middle school. I can't support letting children get that, I don't know what the word is, but get that close, get that going with it. I think the original motion we did set up was the right one, to kind of suspend it until our January meeting and then move forward. But we also said we would work towards a goal for that for the 19th of January. And we got to switch to the 1st in that vote. And I didn't like that. But I'm only one person. I'm not against the kids. I'm not against sports. I love watching it. I love playing it. I was an athlete. I know how they feel. But please, we don't need to find more ways for exposure to our children to possible disaster. So anyway, that's potential disaster. So I'm not supporting it, but thank you for the time consideration.
I think knowing what we just did to Craig and Parker, though it's not at all ideal and not what I would have wanted to do, I did it for the sake of the sub-strain. Taking this opportunity from our high school students, I feel would, like, we've talked a lot about tonight, risk and trade-offs, and I think that the risk of taking that away and the effects on their mental health and social well-being, they would take it very seriously, and they, would follow it. If they want to keep it open, they know what they have to do. And I think they have, it's, there's been studies out there that have been sent to us that grades are better for students that do that. They're more engaged and they're part of a team and part of something bigger and have that engagement. And so I will be supporting this, and I appreciate you bringing it up again, President Huth. If the motion passes, then another amendment could be made for allowing spectators, or thank you.
One more kick at the cat here. I talked to Parker varsity coach Hartwig, and she was grateful, and of course she's the coach. But I said, and it was a play on words, but the ball's in her court. It's in their court because it's up to them. I mean, one athlete on her team could pivot like any other elementary school. It could be like done. And just, I know you can cite examples of not successful in athletics, but in the paper on Monday, here's this young lady from Whitewater High School, Whitewater senior Ella Howers, takes a stroke during the backstroke leg of her heat in a 200-yard individual medley Friday at the WIAA Division II State Girls Swim Championships. So there are districts in this state that are proving that it can be successful. So with that, I'll just pass that. Thanks.
And we all received an email from one of our retired teachers sharing her story about working with her grandkids in athletics. And she was not in favor of us having the athletes participate. So we spent 45 minutes on the phone, talked through. I wanted to know what her rationale was. And at the end of the conversation, we agreed that in athletics, there is a standard that we hold those athletes to. Our son was a 3-sport athlete and a Legion Award winner. I know what the expectations are for those kids. And you can hold kids to high expectations in the classroom, but let me tell you, when you remove them from competition, it wakes up an entire team, and they could be our role models for how to model behaviors, not be in conflict with behaviors. And I don't like to compare them to professional athletes because these kids aren't paid. They do it for the love of the game. So I think we need to consider that and hold them to the expectations. And Superintendent Pufall knows that I'm expecting Assistant Superintendent Garner to hold the ADs to the expectations and the principals to the expectations. Because if people deviate from what our expectations are for being a safe environment for those kids, it'll be done. It'll be done. And that'll be their control, not our control. And the parents need to hear that message, and the student athletes need to hear that message. Because it's obvious everyone in this room takes safety very seriously. And they can be in a safe environment rather than being out on a playground where they're not wearing masks and they're not following the protocols. So I just think that I want somebody to have a chance to prove to me that they can do it the right way. Other comments? Otherwise, we're ready for roll call. Denise?
Myers. Thompson.
Yes.
Ardrey.
Yes.
Dommershausen.
No.
Hayworth.
Yes.
Herda.
No.
Millard.
Yes.
Murray.
Yes.
Huth.
Yes.
Passes 6-3.
Thank you. All right. Was there, where am I here? I've got a few notes. Well, here it is. I would entertain a motion to allow 2 spectator tickets to be issued to parents or family of participating winter sport athletes, with no spectators allowed from other districts, and allow attendance of essential staff and local press in a segregated area to cover home team games. Motion by Michelle. Is there a second?
Second.
Second by Kevin. So the motion is, good luck if you can read that back. The motion is to allow up to 2 spectators of a player at an event. They would be ticketed, so we would know who is coming, and we would have no spectators from other teams. And the press has contacted us that they would like to broadcast our games, be socially distanced and safe, as they've done in other arenas, to meet the needs of the parents who can't be at the game. Yeah.
I'm not sure we can bring up things to vote on that aren't word on the agenda. I think we could set it up for the next meeting to vote on.
It goes along with athletic activities.
It what?
It goes along with athletic activities. That'd be correct. Michael?
I believe it is. I believe it's under the same, you can have multiple motions under the same agenda item.
Yes.
But we didn't add it under it.
It's under the premise of athletic activities. So I'll deem it as in order. Yeah.
I like, I'm in favor of it, obviously, but I do like when it says up to 2, because, for example, at the Craig Pool, the AD and the coaches need to realize that every swimmer can't have 2 people in there.
Right.
They're lucky to get 1. So there is some flexibility and need to use some common sense. Well, hopefully leave that up to each AD and the coach to do that. Thank you.
Yes. Yes, Carl.
They can is this indoor or outdoor?
Regardless. So, in a basketball game, you
I'm
would
thinking
have,
more of swim, which is a little contained.
right, what Kevin just said was.
Yeah, that's what he triggered it.
Yeah, what Kevin just said was the athletic directors would have to have a criteria for how many spectators could attend. It could be 0,
Okay.
but they would work with Superintendent Pufall, Assistant Superintendent Garner, for what those, it won't be a surprise. It's gonna be, this is how many people can be there.
I appreciate that.
Yep.
Thank you.
And I actually appreciate that the media reached out and wanted to try to help. Dale?
This is one I just can't support it. I mean, I'd love to go to my grandparents' or grandkids' games or whatever, but we're talking about a group of people, and we're telling the kids, you're going to go to distance learning, but we're going to make an exception that other people can go watch sporting events. It just does not hold water for me.
Okay.
The idea is good, though.
Anybody else? Michelle?
So I think there's, like Kevin was alluding to, there's opportunity for definitely social distancing and being up to 2. It wouldn't even have to be 2, but I think about, in the field house, there is plenty of room, or even in the main gyms. But yeah, by the pools, there isn't that much room. And I don't even know the wrestling room. I think I've been in there, but briefly. Or if that's maybe in the main gym. I think just for a safety perspective is my motivation behind this, having a parent there for safety. I guess it wouldn't even have to be a parent, but, assuming that a parent would use one of the tickets for a safety reason. I do have a question on, Board President, who tell me when it's appropriate, for allowing the previous motion, we didn't specify how practices are to be in pods, or initially 2B was pods of 4, tier 2B or whatever it was pods of 4, but we're gonna let them start competing December 1st. I think this was more wide open. We didn't specify the size of the pod. We just social distance,
Well, it hasn't changed. The criteria hasn't changed. So it continues based on the prior regulations that we approved, so.
And which was that
Which were-
two?
Yeah, so we're gonna continue to use those tier 2 regulations
Correct.
for practices,
Okay.
which require cohorts of no more than 4 and all the stuff that you heard, Assistant Superintendent Garner go through last week. So in effect, really, you'll have, minimal contact going on between athletes during practice.
Right.
The one place where they get more exposure is obviously during a competition.
And so we're gonna make them be in pods of 4 for practice, but let them compete as a team of 5 on the court
Yeah.
for basketball, or like gymnastics and stuff. They could.
Yeah,
they'll
the
keep-
gymnastics
they'll
is
be
a whole different,
distanced and
right.
swim their
You can
distance.
do
but
the gymnastics with
basketball
distancing. It's-
specifically,
right.
practice is in a pod of 4. Competition is as normal, as what we passed
As
previously.
what you passed last week.
Okay. Thank you.
Carl, yes?
Not going to support it as it is, but I would like to have somebody for us to think, should it fail, I'm still for game officials, coaches, and the media to be able to be there. So that's what I would like to see happen. If it fails, I'd like to come back and do it that way.
Well, you have to have game officials, coaches. You don't have to have media.
Do we?
Well, you do.
I
if
agree. I agree.
We've already approved a competition.
But the media they don't have to have.
No, I said we don't have to have the media.
Yeah, but I'd like them to be there.
Okay.
If it fails, we could bring that up.
Yes, you could. Everybody ready to vote? Yeah.
Do we know the capacity by, let's say, of main gym, or so is there a max on how
Yes,
many
we
are
do.
allowed?
We have a max on every. They have a
But-
spreadsheet on every. Greg
I
probably
think-
has it memorized.
Yeah, I know, I'm sorry, not fire code capacities, but identify, I think, yes, but I think, I read somewhere, I think basketball is maximum 70 people, in there. So I think there's already, is that established somewhere?
Are you talking about socially distanced capacity?
No, I'm,
If I may,
yeah,
I would work with a leader
okay.
he knows the capacity of other events or other rooms. So we would work with him to determine the capacity.
Okay. So we'd limit it, and, okay.
Oh, yeah. Greg?
Well, it would be limited to the number of participants to 2, and then basketball is probably the largest. So, even if you had a team of, right, yeah, so.
The 2 sports where we're probably not going to be able to allow 2 per spectator is swimming, which we've talked about already, and gymnastics. Those, because of the way our physical space is configured, we're gonna have to go look at gymnastics as well, because people get configured into a pretty confined area to watch a gymnastics competition, and it's different more so at Parker than at Craig. At Craig, they're in the gym and it's all spread out, and it frankly won't be any different than a basketball game, and so there's not going to be a restriction there, but there may be at Parker, because that physical plant lays out very differently. And so we'll have to work to, make sure that we can be safe in the crowd in those 2 particular places.
And when I spoke with Assistant Superintendent Garner on this, the reason the term ticketed spectator is because that means that parent is agreeing to the rules that we've established, which is you're going to sit here and there's going to be 10 feet between you and it's going to be spread out like we've seen in many public stadiums. So I appreciate your concern, Dale, but it was to try to, the other issue was Michelle had raised was safety, to have a family member there in case something happened, which we've experienced in our life, where the kid gets hurt playing in the sport and they have to go call a parent who's not around, and that can be dangerous when there's an ambulance needs to be called. So, all right, ready? Go for it.
Thompson. Yes. Ardrey.
Yes.
Dommershausen. No. Hayworth. Yes. Herda. No. Millard.
Yes.
Murray.
Yes.
Huth.
Yes.
I'm missing one. Thank you. Myers. No. My apologies. I came up with 6-3.
All right, that motion passes 6-3. So Patrick can contact the media representatives that had expressed interest. I think it was Josh Goldberg. All right, next on the agenda is future meeting dates and times. I think we're going to go for next May. We've used up our allocation. Do you have a list there, Denise?
I do not.
Okay, well, that's good. I know we canceled finance. Michelle, do you have a meeting coming up?
PPC is December 7th, Monday, December 7th at 4:30 at the ESC.
I thought that was formerly known as PPOC, right?
Per Dale, yes.
For Dale?
Yes.
All right. PPC is what date? I'm sorry?
Monday, December 7th at 4:30.
All right. And our next regularly scheduled board meeting is December 8th. There will be a closed session from 5 to 6, and we will start the regular meeting at 6 o'clock. Any other words of wisdom? Have a great Thanksgiving. If you hunt. If you have no, you can't. If you are a hunter, be safe. And if you're a driver, be safe because the deer are being chased around by the hunters as we speak. We are adjourned.